what happened is I almost died. I was basically trapped in my body, and I made a pact with myself at that moment. I will create, I will find a way to not have to be stuck within a corporate career.
There's this quote that I love from Carl Jung that there is no illness that a human experiences that is not an attempt for our soul to heal us. How would you help someone try to find the equivalent that is your paintings?
You just got to keep showing up for yourself and get better. Make your dreams a reality. Because when you're a kid, your parents always say that. So many people don't pursue the dream. I'm working full time now at my business. And when I say full time, it really means I work when I feel like it. The feelings that were being negated in the corporate world are what are driving my success now as an artist.
Mary, welcome. I want to know your art journey. So you're doing art full time now, and back me up to how that began.
Sure. Well, I've been a creative most of my life. I just never thought I was going to make money doing art. So I kind of followed the path like a lot of folks do. You're raised by your parents who are trying to guide you so that you can provide stability for maybe the family you want to have one day or for yourself. So I did not really pursue anything creative besides sitting in college lectures, doodling in my notebooks so that I wouldn't fall asleep.
Yeah.
And once I got into the corporate world, out of college, that is when I started to have visions of how I truly felt working in an environment that I felt like I was maybe stuck in and not really happy in. And that is where it really all began, this desire to express myself through art, because it was the healthiest way for me to safely vent that I was not happy, that I wasn't fulfilled.
Yeah. What was that corporate job?
Well, I started off working at Kohl's department stores in their corporate office in Wisconsin.
Mm-hmm.
And I started off at the bottom, even though, when you get out of college, you think, okay, I'm going to be an executive right away, only for the real world to slap you in the face. And you realize, no, you're going to start entry level and you're going to have to work your way up.
Yeah.
So I was working I was doing social media for Kohl's department stores. And then I was doing customer service stuff, which then later ended up doing corporate training for the company. And then they relocated me to San Antonio, Texas.
And so growing up, did you know that you were good at drawing and art? As someone who's not conventionally artistic, I love hearing kind of the artist path of someone who kind of had a gift and maybe they never perceived it to be a gift in the beginning, and it just kind of seemed like something that you did naturally. Was that always were you always good at drawing and it was just kind of a pastime, or is that something that has been more of a learned and acquired skill over time?
So I have always been pretty good at drawing. I'd say pretty good. Because again, I was always sketching in notebooks when I was bored in lectures or even in high school. When I took art classes in high school, I knew I was good because the teacher would always take my work and use it as examples. And then when, let's just say that project was done, he would usually ask like, hey, can you keep this? Or someone in the class wanted it. And so because I had, I guess, no emotional connection to those works because they were just projects, I just gave them away, or I threw them away, or I gave it to the art teacher. But so, yeah, I knew I was good, but I can't say that I was proud of what I was creating.
Yeah. So you never did it. So back in the day, it wasn't really like an expressive outlet as much as just a pastime to like doodle part-time while you were kind of trying to stay awake in class.
Correct. Yeah.
And when do you feel like that changed?
It changed when I got into the corporate world and my health started to diminish. So when I say diminish, I'm meaning that the stress that I was enduring was starting to show up and cause health issues, which I was diagnosed with ulcerative colitis, which is a digestive disease, which essentially your autoimmune disease, it's an autoimmune disease disorder, it's heightened. So what it does is it attacks the inner lining of the intestine, believing it's like cancer cells. And then you end up with debilitating pain and the inability to digest food. So you essentially become afraid to eat because it's so extremely painful.
Wow.
Plus, it's like a shameful disease, unfortunately, because to the world outside, you look like a healthy person. But if they only knew that, like internally, you're rushing to the restroom 30 times a day or you're avoiding
Yeah.
food because it's so painful.
And how many years into corporate life when did that manifest?
Well, when I was in college, I was diagnosed with ulcerative colitis, but I wasn't having like flares frequently. But once I got into the corporate world and I was working the 40 to 50-hour weeks, that's when it started to act up. And it got to the point that I couldn't eat during certain periods of time because it would cause me to have to use a restroom, which would take away from productivity. So basically, I just started having to manage my disease at the same time of managing a corporate career, which meant that I really could only eat at night because then I would have, that's when I would deal with any kind of digestive issue. And then that way at work, it wasn't hindering my ability to provide for myself because I didn't have anyone like my family. Like when I grew up, it was tough love. Like you're an adult, you're on your own, figure it out. So there was no one there to back me up. I was my
Right.
own person.
There's this quote that I love from Carl Jung that summarized basically says something like, there is no illness that a human experiences that is not an attempt for our soul to heal us, and that in the healing of it we heal ourselves. And it's that illness is nature's attempt to heal us, and we tend to think of it as this kind of malady or this enemy that is impeding us from everything that we want, and it's actually guiding us to the thing that we want. And so what does that ring true for you, or when did you start to make that, when did you start to experiment with something other than just standard medicinal protocols of take a pill or manage the symptoms as best you can?
Yeah. Well, when I started to create the artwork, I started to feel like that was the only way I could heal because I was having these visions, which were very profound. And the visions were like of, it could have been like a little girl being held in these huge hands. So at the time, that would have been God holding me. And so the image became so strong in my mind that when I was up in between having to go to the restroom, I had to get that out. So, I was already losing sleep because I was awake, but then these images were so profound, they needed to come out of me. And as I would paint like that little girl in the hands of God, I could feel as if I was being held and that I was going to get through it. So
Mm.
it's almost like the art saved me. It carried me through a time that I felt very much isolated and alone in what I was feeling and having to endure, at night. And so creativity happened at night because during the day I was working.
Do you remember like the first, did it feel just totally natural the whole time, or were you like, this is crazy but I must do it? And I also am interested in, like, in terms of, were they just dreams, or they were, what were those visions
Okay, they
like? How did
weren't
they
like a,
show up?
yeah, it wasn't like a dream. It was more like while I was laying in bed trying to get my body to rest, I'm seeing this image. So like my first painting that I created during that time was actually of my heart. So I was dealing with a breakup at the time, and I was thinking about how this hurts so much, but I love myself enough to walk away from a relationship that I know isn't what I need in my life in the long term. So it was more like, it's not a dream. It's more of like I'm laying there trying to go to sleep, but my mind is analyzing, like, how am I feeling? What am I going through? And talking myself through those feelings, and it creates a vision. And so those visions, if it sticks with me for, let's just say, a week, if every night that vision keeps coming to mind, then that means I need to get it out. I need to express it.
Yeah.
And every time I do that, that's where the magic is. It's like, it's
Yeah.
magic.
Yeah. 100%. I have this question a lot of times with artists, and I feel like it's difficult for people who have a natural gift like you have and like others have had to give an equivalent experience. How would you help someone try to find the equivalent that is your paintings with something that's not naturally there, not naturally as artistic as, or they don't have the foundational skill set where like the skills are so not there where it doesn't feel fully expressive. You know what I mean? Like I played sports, and it took me a while to remember that I used to write when I had a speech impediment when I was a little kid, because I felt like I couldn't express myself with the spoken word. And so I would do it with the written word. And so I spent many, many years thinking of myself as not artistic at all because I can't really paint or draw or sing or play music or do any of the quote unquote arts that are you typically think of it as. And so it took me a long time to come back to writing as my way to express myself in the safest way. How would you help somebody that doesn't have that same skill that you have? Because there are a lot of, especially those that are in the corporate world, that want to express themselves in a different way or find an outlet, but just have no heads or tails of where to even get started.
Yeah. Well, think back to when you were younger and what made you excited. What made you curious? And I guess even if maybe you can't really recall that, well, then maybe it's taking some art lessons.
Sure.
Maybe it's, that could be to learn an instrument. Maybe someone's
Right.
like, oh my gosh, I love listening to, certain type of music. I've always wanted to play guitar. Well, then maybe you got to stop being afraid to be amateur, take the
Right.
lessons, learn, Mary had a little lamb, twinkle, twinkle, little star, and just know that that's the foundation. And even as you get good at twinkle, twinkle, little star, like, okay, be proud of yourself. Like, cool, I was able to do that. Now challenge myself to try the next song, and, then share that with someone. And maybe just by sharing it with the right person, you feel some validity or some pride that you tried something that you were open to,
Yeah.
and and it worked out. And then just keep following that. And maybe it isn't music. Maybe you try the guitar, because I did it at 27. I bought a Taylor guitar and thought I'm going to be able to take all my poetry and turn it into songs. And I'll be honest, I just couldn't be passionate about the guitar.
Right.
So sometimes you just got to try and know, okay, I'm honest with myself. Like, that was probably a waste of my money, but I tried it.
No,
Now let
I
me
love
try
it.
something else.
I love the don't be amateur idea, because I feel like, again, especially in the corporate world, you become so professional and so adult and
Mm-hmm.
so kind of stifled by this air of being an expert and being competent that it can feel very freeing to be an amateur again and to have no idea what you're doing and have, I mean, it's all about coming back to the childlike nature. And children, they get frustrated. I have, two 7-year-olds and 11-year-olds. So I'm in this right now. Like but they're okay learning in a way that as you get older, the skill of learning makes you start to associate learning with failure. Like if you're especially in a corporate job and you're supposed to know the answers at the meeting, and you're not supposed to say, I don't know, but I'm going to go learn about it and it'll be great. Like that's not how adults do business together. And so I
Yeah.
love that idea of allowing yourself to be an amateur again and begin again. For you, when did it start to crystallize the idea that maybe this was the path out of the career that you were in? When did that kind of become an option for you? How did that go from you have a vision of a heart while you're going through a breakup to, this could be the escape path that I've been searching for?
Yeah. Well, it actually came on pretty early. So it came on early in my corporate career, because what happened is those profound ideas, those visions I was having at night, they started to accumulate. And I remember my best friend from college came up from Chicago, and she walked into my little efficiency in Wauwatosa, Wisconsin for the first time. I remember her just looking around, and she said to me, "Holy crap, MJ, if you don't do anything with this art, I'm going to be so pissed off at you." Like, she was blown away with like how I just had expressed these feelings, these thoughts, and she was wowed at what she saw. Um, and I know when I was creating them, my internal voice, which I used to think was God, was telling me, like, this is what you're going to do with your life. But I knew when I was really honest with myself about the level of where my work was at, that it wasn't at the caliber it needed to be to make more money than what I was working in my corporate job.
Mm-hmm.
So that was the predicament. It was like, well, this is what I want to do, but I have to do this because I got to be able to pay my mortgage. I got to be able to pay for my cell phone. I got to pay for my car payment, my insurance. And this art, while it may be good on the walls, it's likely not going to sell at any high dollar.
Sure.
So I was basically just stuck, and being stuck for for a long time. I mean, I was stuck in a corporate career for over a decade, creating art as an outlet to essentially like help me to feel. Because if you think
Yeah.
about it, when you're in the corporate world, everything is logical. Can we quantify it? Can we measure it?
Yeah.
So it's, you can't say, well, I'm going to fire this employee because I feel that they're not good for the job. No, it's like you need
Yeah.
to, so feelings get taken out of a corporate career. But as
Right.
an artist, feelings are what drive the art. Feelings
Totally.
is why I show up, because feelings is why we're human.
Yeah.
Like, that's why we fall in love. That's why we sacrifice things for our family, because we feel, because we love. And unfortunately, in the corporate sector, those who are sensitive and emotional, who are in tune with it, it's really hard to like shut that off and act like everything's fine when you're devoting the best years and time of your life to a job that's soul sucking.
Right. Yeah, and I actually like that connection because I've said myself the soul sucking nature of, I was at a big law firm. Imagine something more logical or analytical than with big lawyers. And I actually like this. I actually like the feeling, the idea that it's more feeling sucking than it is soul sucking. Because soul sucking, you don't really know why. Like we all say it and we don't really know why it is. We all
Mm-hmm.
just agree, like, yeah, corporate world sucks and it sucks your soul. But I think it's actually a more precise definition that it is really, it's because it takes the feeling out, and that is by definition the humanness of it. So you get to the same place of it sucks your soul out, but I think more precisely it's because there's not really space for feeling in in it. And that's kind of by design. And you can't really, try to turn the tides of the ocean, like that is
Yes.
the nature of the beast. And you simply have to learn how to either navigate within that as best you can, like you did for many years, or opt out, which comes at a very heavy cost financially and prestige wise and the hierarchy of the corporate ladder of society. And so, what did you do when you felt like that? Was it simply a matter of just the 10,000 hour rule and practicing, or did you start taking courses and coaches, or what was it to get the skill to the level where you felt like more confident in the work itself?
Good question. Well, what happened is I almost died. And my health got to the point that I was hospitalized because my intestines were ready to rupture, and they put a PICC line in my arm that connected to my heart, and I was fed intravenously for 2 months. And I was so weak I couldn't walk. I couldn't take care of my 6-month-old son. I had home health, and I was basically trapped in my body. And I made a pact with myself at that moment. And that pact was, if I will ever regain my health, I will create and I will get better. And I will find a way to not have to be stuck within a corporate career. So what happened is, thankfully, I got better because of they call it TPN, total parental nutrition. It saved my life. So I got healthier. I was able to start digesting food again. I did have to go back to work, which was really hard for me to do that, because then I became scared of working because I knew what it was costing me.
Sure.
And I knew, how am I going to do this while raising two little ones, while having a farm and all these responsibilities and all this financial pressure that's on me to provide? So I said, okay, I'm going to devote 1 year of my life. And what I will do is, there was actually a corporate, I was sitting in like some kind of, I don't know, motivational thing with one of the CEOs, and he's talking to us all. And he said, the only way you're going to get better at anything is either you're going to mimic or you're going to read. And I didn't have time to read because I had an infant and, at the time, a 3-year-old, and I was working full time. So I thought, let me take just a few lessons from someone who's doing what I want to be doing. And when I took those lessons with a local artist named Vi Dunhar, she really pushed my skill level just a little further, because being a self-taught artist, I really didn't know how to paint fur. I didn't know how to paint feathers. So I was just trying the best I could, but having her look over my shoulder and then her show me, hey, try this technique. And then I tried it, and then it was like, ooh, I did it. Like, ooh, now I can't wait to get home and implement it. But I can't implement it because I got a newborn and a 3-year-old and a husband. And so I had to make it a priority to get better. And what I did was, when I put the kids to bed at night, I knew that if I went into my studio, I could create from 9 until midnight, 5 days a week. So during the week when I had to work, and then I would just push myself to getting better. And I knew that I needed to make money because I needed tools to be able to do my job. So when I first started, I didn't even have a computer. I didn't have a camera. I barely had any like paintbrushes that were even like decent paintbrushes. So I didn't even have the tools to do my job. So I knew I needed to make some money that wasn't taking away from the family, and then reinvest it into my art so that I could get better. Because even at the time, like, I had an easel, it was a metal easel. And if I put too much pressure on the legs, it would literally collapse. And my art would, and the palette would, be everywhere. Uh, so, when you start off, you're starting off really with just the basics.
Yeah, I love. I mean, there are two things that I love about this, which is one, it follows the hero's journey pretty to the T, because you have a friend that maybe sees the potential in a way that you don't, that ultimately kind of encourages you to go on the journey, and then you almost always have to find a mentor that pushes you. And I think what people tend to hate about a story like this is it's so much more intoxicating, this idea of, and I even had it at the beginning of this, I have this narrative of I can't draw, right? And so I love the idea that you had this gift as a kid that I didn't have, and because it lets me off of the hook to find my own artistic thing. But when you say that you spent 7 hours a day, when you spent 35 hours a week on top of your corporate job, simply honing the craft with someone helping you, the shitty part about someone like me is that then doesn't let any of us off the hook of finding our own thing and committing to the craft of it, because then it becomes all possible, which sucks, because then we're responsible for finding it and getting better at
Yeah,
it.
exactly. Like
That's how I hate your story, Mary.
yeah.
The more I hear it, I hate everything that you're saying, I think.
Ah, well, it's okay. Yeah, how much
um,
you prioritize. And I'll tell you, if you don't prioritize your drawing skills, you're not going to get any better. But if you do,
and
you will.
I'm also interested in, because I'm also interested in where your ulcerative colitis was in this. I feel like, do you feel like that's been a good like check engine light for you, kind of across the board? There's this idea in the Gospel of Thomas. It's one of my favorite scriptures that says, "If you do not bring forth that which is within you, what you do not bring forth will kill you, and if you do bring it forth, what you do bring forth will give you a new life." And I find it interesting, just the physical metaphor of your intestines, your whole everything that is within you that is killing you, because
Yes.
you haven't committed to bring it forth and bring it and put it out into the world in an artistic way. And so I just find the metaphor for that very interesting.
Yeah. Well, I can tell you, I'm a lot healthier now.
Yeah.
So I'm working full time now at my business. And when I say full time, it really means I work when I feel like it. I show up when it feels right. I just follow the alignment now, which is how am I feeling today? The feelings that were being negated in the corporate world are what are driving my success now as an
Yeah.
artist. And so I now have the freedom to flow, to be present with my kids, with my animals, with my art, with my friends. I have the freedom to live the way that I feel I was designed to live, versus when I was in the corporate world, I would define it as I was in a cage. So I'm out of the cage. Now, don't get me wrong, I still have to make money, but I'm doing what I love to do. So once you kind of figure out, like, okay, this is what makes me want to show up, this is what makes me feel alive, you just got to keep showing up for yourself and get better. And you got to share it, because if you don't share it, no one's going to know you exist.
Yeah.
And so
The,
you have the
the,
tools at your fingertips.
and
It's a great time to be alive and be an entrepreneur.
yeah. The expressing part, I think, is where a lot of people get hung up, because I do think you're creating it to be witnessed, and the creation almost demands a witness in order for it to have um, the therapeutic effect that it can have. But because you're also sharing it with the idea of creating an impact in someone else, which you cannot do if you do not have the courage to express it, to share it with the world. And you've made two references just as we were talking, with the hand, and then one other time of I once thought of this as God, and now I don't. What is your God view, and how has that changed through this process?
Good question. Well, I used to think it was God, but now I realize it was my higher self. So it's my wiser self. So it could be in some ways as if like the 80-year-old version of me is encouraging me and is speaking to, which now I'm almost 40 years old, still in my 30s. It's me, it's my intuition, it's the voice inside of me that I used to be afraid of. So when I say that, what I'm saying is that when I was younger, I used to surround myself with a lot of people, and I defined myself by what other people, what their interpretation was of me. The more I have spent time alone, the more I can hear what my soul is speaking, what it needs. And the voice inside me, I used to fear, because if I spent time alone, then I need to acknowledge that I'm not happy, that I'm really not fulfilled. Oh, gosh, I have to admit that to myself. That's
Right.
a hard thing to do. But once you do acknowledge it, then you got to figure out, okay, I got to start taking action, because this isn't me living. Instead, I'm just acting. And so
Yeah.
when I was in corporate America, I was a paid actress. But I'll tell you, now as an artist, I'm Mary Jean Ruhnke. I'm
Yeah.
authentic. I get to be me. And there's no one like me. And there's
Yeah.
no one like you.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a good, I don't know if it's Rumi or someone else that's like, in the next life, they're not going to ask you why you weren't more like Moses. They're going to ask you why you weren't more like yourself, you know? So speak to maybe the archetypical starving artist, which there seems to be hordes of, right? People who are producing art, who kind of know what their thing is. We kind of spoke to those who haven't maybe even begun the search, but someone who knows what their thing is, and it simply, because I feel like for that crowd, as much as I've experienced them, and I've experienced them less than the former crowd, it almost it almost feels like what was once their gift is in the process of becoming a curse to them. You know, it's like they're chained to it in some way, and they don't know how to reorient the relationship where they can both get their economic desires met while also keeping their expressive voice at the same time. And what would you say to that person as someone who has kind of threaded the needle through both?
Well, I was starving at one time too. And what you got to do is change the
Get better.
internal voice. You got to change the dialogue, because a lot of,
Yeah.
if you're a creative, you probably have some insecurities. You've got some things that are holding yourself back from getting to the next level, which, everyone's levels are different. But for me, like, I used to hide behind my artwork. And I think a lot of folks are hiding behind their artwork because they're afraid to look like an amateur. They're afraid, maybe they think, I'm not beautiful enough to show up on social media. I'm too old. No one would want to look at me. Um, I used to think that same thing when I got furloughed from my corporate career. I thought, oh man, am I just too old now? I'm in my 30s. Like, maybe I should have done this in my 20s when I was sexy, which, don't get wrong, I got my sexy back now. But there was a time that, we have this illusion sometimes that marketing has fed to us of what is desirable, what is worth being like watching. But what I have found is that the more I show up authentically, the frequency goes up and the right people come in, and my message resonates with those people because they're able to see themselves within me and within the artwork. And that's real connection. That's not lust. That's not always sexy, to be honest.
Yeah.
Most of the time I show up, I'm in my scrubs, my hair, I may not even put a brush through it. But today I'm going to make some beautiful art, and I'm going to show up to express myself and hopefully put out some encouraging words that shows someone else out there that they too can show up authentically, imperfectly, and that their art matters beyond their studio.
Yeah. I feel like I feel like that being authentic is such a buzzword that it's almost become trite at this point. What's the difference in feeling, or um, how do you know whether you're doing it or not?
Uh, I know it because I know I'm vulnerable.
Yeah.
Like I know, um, I really don't
Yeah.
hold back
Authentic
much.
is yeah.
So it's like, okay, if you're self-censoring, then you already know, okay, I'm being inauthentic.
Right.
So you already know yourself. So if though, like for me, like I can tell you what held me back initially from being like a starving artist to a thriving artist was I had to get past my insecurities, like my physical insecurities. I had to get past it. And the way that I got over it is I started showing up without any makeup on. And I started to actually share that with my fans. I remember when I made a post about it, and the post, like I showed up and I was like, hey, I just want to let you guys know, like, I'm struggling with hiding behind my artwork and needing to come out. And I realized that if you guys can love me and see the beauty in me, I need to learn to start loving me and seeing the beauty within myself too. And when I shared that, the amount of response that came back from people who could relate with that um, really showed me, like, wow, if anything, I just made a deeper connection with the world by sharing that I was scared to do this and that, you know, I didn't think I was pretty enough without makeup to be here. It's like facing your fears. You need to face it. You need to face your insecurity and learn to look around at the people who love you, and it doesn't bother them. So maybe we got to stop letting it bother us.
Yeah.
I still remember it. There's a work, it's called If You Only Knew the Weight I Carried. So when I was getting out of the corporate world and doing art professionally, I was having to face a lot of my fears. And that put me in a dark headspace. And I remember contemplating suicide. Not that I was going to do it, but the idea came into my mind. And I thought, maybe I need to like get this out of me. Cause like keeping it in isn't healthy, but when I speak, like I maybe not, I'm afraid to speak it, to tell someone like I'm thinking about, harming myself. So I created a painting of a crow hanging, and then I had its spirit coming out, and it allowed for me to feel what it would be like to not have to have that weight on me. Like I felt like, okay, I could release it healthy versus the old version of me. If I didn't have art, I would have been drinking.
Right.
So that work, when I showed it, I remember being so afraid. I shared it on TikTok, like the process. It went viral. And there was like this huge response to it. And then it sold the next day. And I thought, oh my gosh, here's something I was so afraid to show the world that I did it because, gosh, then people will know that I think about harming myself. Turned out to be a work that proved to me that vulnerability is authenticity that creates connection, which creates community. And we're all struggling with something. And art is like this beautiful channel that can connect with everyone, age, gender, sex, or it's universal in the language it speaks. And so a lot of times people describe my art as it's soulful. It literally spoke to their soul.
Yeah.
And I mean, people write to me in different languages across the globe, you know, telling me this. The more vulnerable I am in the work, even though it's scary, because gosh, those who are close to me are going to know that I don't got it all together.
Yeah.
It makes a difference.
100%. Yeah. Yeah. I notice, especially when when I am getting criticism online, I'll start to wall myself up, and be less vulnerable. And I try to check myself by seeing, I'll try to pay attention to like how I'm talking to I'm a pretty private person just in general. And so I'll see how I talk to my friend, like a friend that's in a safe space, like a dinner or something, what I'll say to them. And then as best I can, I'll try to take that same conversation and bring it online and share it in the same way that I would share it with a close friend, even though it's much scarier with the faceless hordes of haters that I get sometimes. But yeah, you have to face the fear, and I also think what you said just in your story of that, with that artist who is kind of enslaved by the gift in some way. Sometimes it is a process of just getting better, of committing. Again, I feel like the artist has the same kind of delusion as the non-artist, that it's just all supposed to happen with the muse, you know what I mean? And like the universe is supposed to provide the way, and that the great artists, that almost like getting a mentor or taking lessons or something, that cheapens the art in some way, because because hard work was required, instead of just, the gift that Zeus gave you is came to you fully formed. And if you look at all of the greats across, art, sports, whatever, they all have coaches, they all are working on technique, and they're committing to the craft, to push themselves in the craft more. And that is the move from the amateur to professional at some point that you have to take, to really get there, And so what do you feel like the next 5 years looks like for you? What's the dream?
The dream is to start getting into the world. Like I can create
What's the
anywhere
scare?
now.
What scares you? What do you feel like is the thing that scares you the most now? Like, you're obviously hyper proficient at your style and your voice, and so what's the new frontier of scary things?
Podcasts right here. This is
There we
this
go.
is great. Yeah, like podcasts, but it's exciting. Like I'm someone too, when I face the fear, I love like how it feels afterwards. It's like
Totally.
I feel electric. Like I'm so proud of myself. Like face the fear and then try it again and get better at it. So
Right.
I would say I plan to travel because I want to be inspired by things outside of the bubble. So I
Sure.
live on a farm in South Texas. So I'm inspired by nature, by the wildlife that are around me. But the world is big and there is a lot more for me to experience. And I am a Pisces and I love water. And I feel like I want to do some snorkeling and I want to start exploring like underwater. Like I'm in the forest with my foxes and my crows and my wolves all the time, but let's go down under. So
Yeah.
I want to experience new things and then see how that impacts the art, which then will allow for me to move into different themes. And my work is just going to keep evolving, just like myself. Like my style of work didn't happen overnight. It happened because the more I showed up and the more I was realizing like what made me excited to go into my studio tonight and paint, the more I continue to do that. And that's really how you find your style of work. You find it by showing up and really being honest with yourself. Like, what made me want to show up today? I really love pulling color up from darkness because I'm in a dark place. But you know what? Hope. There's hope in there.
Yeah.
So it's those kinds of things. But I'm excited for travel and doing more podcasts so I can reach more people and inspire them to, get out of the cage, try
Yeah.
something new, spend time alone and really figure out what is your inner voice telling you to do and do it
What is
because
and this will be my last question. I feel like you kind of touched on it. If all of the art goes away, there's this idea from Camus that basically every artistic work from a given artist is just an extension of of the artist circling around one core idea that after you look at the body of work, you can kind of see that core idea implemented, in different iterations over time. What would you say, as best you can articulate it right now, if all of the art was gone and you just simply had to express the thing that you're trying to express through the animals and through the painted page? What's the message that you think is the most important, resonant with you, that you hope to continue to try to express in as many different outlets as you can find?
Well, for me, my art is my story, and it's about resilience. It's about breaking like this cycle, like breaking the conditioning, breaking the pattern, and doing it even though a lot of people didn't believe that I could do it. Even though I didn't have the support initially, I knew that it made me feel alive and it gave me fulfillment, and that one day I would be able to break free from that corporate world that was destroying my health because I wasn't doing what I knew I was supposed to do with my life. So it's about being resilient. It's about, really showing others that if you can learn to trust yourself, that you can really make your dreams a reality. Because when you're a kid, your parents always say that, but then, so many people don't pursue the dream. But
Yeah.
if you just, keep being tenacious and going after it, you can make your dreams come true.
It's beautiful. My signature line on my emails is Raleigh, trust yourself, Williams. So we share that message.
Nice. Love it. I'm glad you understand this. This is beautiful.
I get it. Kindred spirits.